My name is Lorraine, and I'm 66 years old. I've never been one for drama, truly. I come from the kind of generation where you put your head down, do what needs doing, and don't go airing your dirty laundry. But when your husband of 42 years leaves you out of his will and gives everything to a woman you've never even heard of, well, that kind of betrayal has a way of ripping the quiet right out of you. Frank passed away in March. Cardiac arrest, they said. Quick, almost peaceful. He was out on the golf course with his buddies, collapsed on the 9th hole, and never got back up. The men said he didn't suffer, but they didn't have to come home to an empty house. They didn't have to sleep on his side of the bed because the other side still smelled like him. That was me. Frank and I weren't perfect. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. He had his moods, and I had mine. After he retired, we got on each other's nerves more often than not. He'd complain that I made the coffee too strong. I'd roll my eyes when he retold the same story about his Navy days for the 1000th time. But we were companions. We shared decades, losses, laughter, a life. That's why, when I sat in the lawyer's office 3 weeks after the funeral and heard the words, "Frank has left the bulk of his estate to a Miss Selena Moore," it felt like the room caved in. Selena Moore. I remember blinking slowly. I'm sorry. Who? The lawyer, a stuffy little man with a voice like a typewriter, didn't even flinch. Miss Moore. She's listed here as the primary beneficiary. The house, the stocks, the life insurance, the cabin up north. Everything. Your name is notably absent. Notably absent. I just sat there, staring at the polished walnut desk as though it might explain something. As though if I looked long enough, the surface might rearrange itself into answers. She got everything. And me? I got a condolence card from his golf buddies and a basket of pears from the condo association. I didn't cry. I don't think I even breathed for a minute or two. I just left the office quietly, went home, and stared at the house I'd built with him. My hands still smelled like lemon oil from dusting the baseboards that morning, like it mattered. For days, I walked around like a ghost. I didn't tell anyone. Not my daughter, not the neighbors. I needed to understand before I let the shame wash over me. Then I found the letter. It was tucked inside an old cigar box, one I almost threw out with Frank's junk drawer odds and ends. The envelope had my name written in his handwriting, shaky, rushed, the kind he used when he didn't want anyone seeing what he was doing. Inside were just 2 lines. Lorraine, if anything ever happens to me, don't let her win. You know where to look. F. That was it. Don't let her win? What did that even mean? The next morning, I made a pot of coffee, not too strong, and sat down at Frank's old filing cabinet in the garage. He never let me touch it. Always said it was just boring paperwork. But Frank wasn't good at locking things, and I knew his favorite code was our anniversary, 0604. It clicked open on the first try. There were folders, dozens arranged meticulously. Taxes, receipts, appliance manuals, golf tournament registrations, and then one thin file labeled in black Sharpie, CM. My stomach tightened. I pulled it out with shaking hands. Inside were photos, notes, credit card statements, hotel bookings, jewelry receipts. Selena Moore was not a name that just popped up at the reading of the will. She had been around, lurking in our life like a parasite while I was busy baking casseroles and cleaning grout. And by the looks of it, she hadn't just been his companion. She was a con artist. There was a background check slip paper clipped to the receipts. Frank had run it. Her real name was Marissa Fields. She'd changed it legally 2 years ago. There were minor fraud charges in other states. Small towns, multiple aliases, it was starting to make sense. But one thing didn't. If Frank knew she was a fraud, why leave her everything? Unless he didn't. Unless the will had been changed, manipulated, after he died. And just like that, I wasn't sad anymore. I was on fire. I've always said a woman knows when something isn't right. Maybe not in the moment, but there's always a flicker, a shadow that sticks in your mind. Looking back now, I realize I'd seen it. The late phone calls Frank would silence, the change in his cologne, the way he started putting locks on drawers like we were teenagers with secrets. But I never imagined this. After I found the file marked CM with receipts, hotel records, and a background check on Selena, I felt like I was watching someone else's life. My hands were shaking, but my mind was sharp. I couldn't cry anymore. I was too busy thinking. If Frank knew who she really was, if he suspected her of anything, why leave everything to her in his will? Unless the will wasn't real. Frank wasn't a careless man. He never changed his will in over 2 decades. We'd reviewed it together after his minor heart scare in 2009. At that time, everything was to be left to me and our daughter Denise, not a mysterious woman named Selena Moore. So either Frank had completely lost his mind in his last days, or someone had changed the will after his death. I didn't want to be wrong. I also didn't want to sound like a bitter old woman hallucinating foul play because her husband cheated. But when I went back to the law firm, Denslow and Becket, I requested to see the original signed documents. That's when things started to crack. The junior associate, a sweet girl named Kara who still wore scuffed ballet flats, was surprised when I asked for the signature page. She gave me a tight smile and said the lead partner, Mr Becket, would have to approve that kind of request. But I saw it, the flicker of something uneasy behind her eyes. When Mr Becket came in, he was polite. Too polite, in fact. He spoke quickly and steered the conversation away from the contents of the will and toward grief counseling resources. That's when I knew. There was something off about the timing, and more importantly, the signature. Frank had a very specific way of signing his name. Years in the Navy had left his right hand with a slight tremor. He always looped the F wide and dramatic to compensate. But the signature on the revised will? Clean. Too clean. No tremble? Almost. Elegant. Not his. I left that day with a strange sense of purpose. I didn't accuse anyone. Not yet. I wasn't ready to play all my cards. That night, I sat in Frank's recliner, holding the old file he'd hidden. Among the receipts was one dated 2 weeks before his death. A large payment to a private investigator in Tulsa, of all places. Attached was a sticky note. Meet Thursday. Final update. But he died the Wednesday before. He never made it to the meeting. The next morning, I called the PI firm listed on the receipt. The receptionist, at first hesitant, opened up once I gave her Frank's name and said I was his wife. Yes, ma'am. Mr. M. Hartford had us looking into a woman named Marissa Fields. We just compiled a final report. I held my breath. Would you like it emailed or printed and sent? I whispered. Both. When the documents arrived, it confirmed everything. Selena Moore, real name Marissa Fields, was running a long con. She'd done it before. Wealthy older men, flirtations turned companionship, sudden revisions to legal documents, quick deaths under convenient circumstances, and always, a disappearance once the money hit her account. It was all there in black and white. Now she was trying to do it again, with my husband. And I was supposed to sit quietly and let her collect everything he'd built for 40 years? Not this time. I may be 66. I may be grieving. But I am not stupid. So I called our daughter Denise. I told her to come over. She arrived with 2 iced coffees and a look of concern. I told her everything, from the changed will to the fake identity to the PI's final report. She sat still for a long time. Then she said, "Mom, we need to stop her." I smiled, coldly. "Oh, honey, we already have." You see, Frank didn't just leave behind a letter and a file. He left behind insurance, literal and metaphorical. And the next time Marissa showed her face at the law office, thinking she was walking into a payday, she was walking into the trap we had laid. And she never even saw it coming. The day Selena was scheduled to officially claim her inheritance was a sunny Friday, the kind of day my Frank would have spent pruning the roses and humming Sinatra. I dressed with purpose that morning. Dark navy suit, small pearl earrings, and the same heels I wore to Denise's graduation. Nothing dramatic. I wanted to look like any other grieving widow, composed, controlled, maybe even a little defeated. Let her underestimate me. It was the last comfort I'd grant her. Denise met me at the parking lot. She was nervous. I could see it in the way she smoothed her blouse and kept glancing at her phone. But I squeezed her hand. "We're just here to listen," I said, and to watch her unravel herself. When we walked into Denslow and Becket, the receptionist looked stunned. "Mrs. Hartford, you're not scheduled for today," she said. "Oh, I know," I replied smoothly. "I'm just here to observe the proceedings. You see, I brought some additions to the file." I tapped the envelope I carried under my arm. Mr. Rottbecket met us in the conference room with a pinched expression and beads of sweat already forming on his forehead. Clearly, he'd gotten wind that something wasn't sitting right. But it was too late for him to wriggle out now. A few moments later, she arrived. Marissa Fields, dressed in sleek black, oversized sunglasses perched on her head like a movie star from a cheaper era. She offered a soft, practiced smile as she entered. And when she saw me sitting there, she froze just for a second. Not long enough for anyone else to notice. But I saw it. "Linda," she said coolly, "didn't expect to see you here." "Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world," I replied with a sweetness that would rot teeth. We all sat. Becket opened the meeting with legalese, reading the terms of the new will. "To Miss Selena Moore, my devoted partner and companion, I leave the estate in its entirety." She smiled. She even dared to glance over at me, smug as anything. And that's when I leaned forward. "I have something to add before we proceed." I pulled out the manila envelope. Becket tried to interrupt, but I handed it to him directly. "You might want to read this first." Out loud. He hesitated, then opened it. Inside was the full PI report. Background on Selena Moore, including her real name, known aliases, previous legal entanglements, and open fraud investigations in 2 states. It also included a copy of the original will, one that Frank never officially amended, because he never had the chance. But the real kicker, a signed letter from Frank, handwritten and notarized just 3 days before he died. Something I'd uncovered hidden behind his favorite painting in the study. In the letter he wrote, "If anything happens to me suddenly, and there is any change to my will that does not benefit Linda or Denise, know that it was never done with my knowledge or approval. I believe I may be the target of manipulation by a woman calling herself Selena Moore, real name unknown to me. Please seek counsel, and do not let her touch a dime of what we've built." Becket read it aloud, his voice starting steady but cracking by the end. You could hear a pin drop. Marissa's face went completely still, but her hands clenched. I noticed her nails were done in a sharp French tip, like claws, and they tapped against the table. This is a smear job, she hissed. Frank loved me. That letter? Probably fake. Just some paranoid scribble from a confused old man. I cut in, calm as glass. You seem to have forgotten. I've been married to Frank for 42 years. I know his handwriting better than anyone, and I also know that you poisoned him. Her mouth parted, but no sound came out. Yes, poisoned. It was subtle, but the toxicology report from the coroner's supplemental review, something I'd requested after consulting a forensic contact Denise had from her medical rotation days, showed trace amounts of a synthetic compound not used in any of Frank's prescriptions. It was enough to stress his already fragile heart. Too much to be coincidental. And though I hadn't yet turned it over to the police, I wanted this confrontation first. I made it clear. You can run now, Marissa, but if you so much as touch a penny, I will hand this to the district attorney myself. I promise you that. She didn't say a word. She stood, shook once, and then stormed out of the office like her feet were on fire. Becket tried to gather the papers, stammering something about needing legal clarification, but I just stood. Have your firm review your vetting practices, I told him. And maybe next time, don't help a woman commit fraud because she wears a low neckline. I walked out with my daughter at my side, into the bright sun. We hadn't just cleared Frank's name. We'd defended our home, our dignity, and everything we had built together. But it wasn't quite over yet. I had one more thing to do, and it involved Frank's safe deposit box, the key to which I just found in his old cigar tin. Because sometimes, even after death, a man can still protect the ones he loves. And sometimes, he leaves behind one last surprise. It was strange walking into the bank alone. I'd been there countless times with Frank. We used to joke about what a secret agent he looked like whenever he opened that safe deposit box. Linda, he'd grin, this little box holds everything we've ever worked for, and a few things I never told you about. At the time, I thought it was just his dramatics, but as I stood in that small, sterile room with a velvet-lined tray and a key that hadn't seen light in years, I understood. He had meant every word. The banker turned and left me to it, as protocol dictates. I opened the box, half expecting it to be empty. But there it was, a neat stack of folders, envelopes, and one red leather journal, weathered around the edges like it had been thumbed through often. I opened it carefully. His handwriting greeted me like an old friend. Linda, if you're reading this, then something's gone wrong. And if you found this journal, then I know you've already started putting the pieces together. He wrote about the woman calling herself Selena Moore. He admitted how flattered he'd been, how clever she was with her praise and her feigned admiration for the things he built. She was charming, he said. Too charming. But it didn't last. She slipped one night, called me Gary, told me about a life she lived in Vegas. She claimed she was joking, but I saw the panic in her eyes. That was when I stopped trusting her. That was when I started writing everything down. The journal documented it all, her multiple aliases, the questions she asked about his health, his finances, the night he caught her going through his desk. He'd hired someone to follow her, someone discreet. That's how he discovered her real name, Marissa Grant, and that she had a history of attaching herself to older men with assets and dying early. There were pictures, dates, even a copy of the fake ID she'd used to open a P.O. box under the name Selena Moore. All of it backed up the investigator's report I had submitted at the will reading. But that wasn't all. Frank had prepared another will, his true final will, locked away in this very box, dated, signed, and witnessed. He never filed it because he feared Marissa might retaliate. He was planning to cut her off completely and come clean to me after Denise's wedding. But he ran out of time. And that's when the tears finally came. Not just for the betrayal, not for the months I spent thinking he'd stopped loving me, but for how hard he tried to make things right in the end. Inside the will, he left everything to me and Denise. The house, the stocks, the business holdings, even the vacation home in Maine I thought he'd sold years ago. He included a letter for Denise as well, tucked in the same envelope, telling her how proud he was and how he regretted not saying so enough. The next day, I brought everything to Denslow and Becket. Mr. Becket was visibly shaken. I gave him one chance to make it right, file the correct will, clean up the mess, and report Marissa to the authorities for fraud and attempted financial exploitation. I told him plainly, "You're either on the side of the truth, or I'll bury this firm in lawsuits until it's nothing but a faded nameplate." To his credit, he chose truth. Within days, the corrected documents were filed. The original fraudulent will was nullified. A formal report was sent to the state attorney. And Marissa, well, she skipped town before the police could get to her. But with the trail she left, it's only a matter of time. A week later, I stood in our garden, the one Frank loved so much, with Denise beside me, sipping tea. She looked over and said, "You know, Mom, you could have broken down. No one would have blamed you." I smiled and reached for a rose Frank had planted for our 40th anniversary. "I did break down," I said quietly, "but not where anyone could see, and not until I had won."